Hello, fellow art students. I woke up this morning and I thought, aside from doing the in-person demonstration next week with the block-in, I should do one in a recording here so you can go back to it and revisit as often as you need. As a bit of a review, in last night's class, we looked at symbolic thinking with regards to features and drawing the portrait, and technical thinking, or perceiving and measuring correctly what we're looking at. Symbolic is almost like hieroglyphics. It's the very basics of what you have in mind, say, when you think of an eye or a nose. But it is by no means a convincing representation of it. It lacks the three-dimensional quality of some of the work that we might really admire by the old masters, and that is what we're looking to replicate here. That being said, symbolic art design is fun and beautiful and playful, and I don't know about you, but I find examples of it all around my home in a lot of my home decor. It's simplified, it's flattened, it's decorative. But we are going for that high realism kind of quality. And to get there, we need strong foundations. And to get these strong foundations, we need to find some basic structure of the head and all of the features and where they fall into place, as well as general posture of the figure. Is it leaning, tilted? Is the head back, forward, etc.? In this case, we're going to be working from a photo that I pulled off of Pinterest from a very talented photographer. It's a 3/4 view, so kind of on this plane. And there's nothing too complicated about it. We'll leave a lot of strong gesture out of it for now while we're just tackling the basics. About tackling those basics, to be frank, when I start a drawing, I suppose I don't use those basics, or I may use only parts of them now. Or if I'm really struggling to capture something, I'll go back to the basics, to those foundations. But once you've trained your eye to see, it is easier, saves time, to just go right in and begin drawing without building these foundations. You sort of intuitively understand them. Unlike training the muscles in your body, like your biceps, for example, training your mind's eye to see is something that is not so easy for me to teach or demonstrate. If I were a physical trainer, there are all sorts of exercises I could teach you to build strength and flexibility in your arms, and within a short period of time, you would see improvements in those features. You can see improvements with learning to see, perceive, and measure better, to think more technically as an artist. But demonstrating how to get there is more difficult, more challenging. I think this is because it's a very cerebral thing and everybody's brain works differently, and some lessons will work for some people and some lessons won't work great for some people. I don't know if there's any other preamble I should include. I suppose we could look at our tools again. Last night we opened up our gum eraser, 2H pencil. I don't know, let's give it a try. What I have, and we discussed this last night, is pencils with varying hardnesses. So initially when I'm blocking in and I'm likely to make quite a few mistakes, I'm going to use my hardest pencil and I'm going to very lightly draw so that I have less wear and tear on the page as I'm trying to fix those mistakes, erasing, correcting, that kind of thing. Ooh, a 4B pencil, which is quite a bit softer. I should probably get another one of these. I have a 6B, which is getting to be rather just a nub now. I also, got some graphite on my skirt. I also got out my blending tool. Yeah, I'll pick some of these up soon and bring them to class because these are really handy, and I just have a couple spares, but we'll need some for the upcoming class. So there you go, blending tool could come in handy. How far will we take this drawing? We will take it to the point where we've blocked it in and we we've identified a map of where the darkest shadows lay. As far as getting to like a finished drawing, you know, really fully conceived in all of its details and its compositions, I don't think we'll go that far today. It'll take us long enough just to do this block in and the shadow map. So see you on the page. Here's the image we're going to be working from. And as I mentioned, it's a 3/4, meaning she's neither face on, nor are we seeing her from the side or her profile only. She's somewhere in between the two. The lighting being used on her is what might be called a Rembrandt lighting technique that is coming at sort of a 45-degree angle across her face, leaving much of this part of her face in shadow, but a very interesting little triangle of light here that just slightly captures and lifts out some of the details in that eye that is farthest away from us. To begin with, we won't focus on the composition so much as just landing ourselves squarely in the middle of the page and not cramping our drawing into any of these 4 quadrants. We're going to leave ourselves lots of room to work here. And to begin with, we're going to draw a basic sphere to represent the top portion of the sitter's head. And from there, we'll create some fall-off lines representing roughly her jaw. I do perceive a slight lean, as though she's attentively leaning forward slightly, but her neck does appear to be pretty ramrod straight. So we'll go in there, I think I made that a little wide, and make some notes on where her neck is, and remembering that the neck is composed of a lot of very important stabilizing muscles like the trapezius. We will be mindful of that, and also building up where her costume lays against her here. All right, with that in place, there are a number of points we can focus on, but perhaps most critically, let's address finding the center line of her face. So from the middle of her chin through to the top of her head. Now, the head curves away from us at about the hairline quite steeply. And I am drawing that center line in with a bit of mind to the curvature of the forehead area, the top of the head, where it comes out at her nose, where it dips in at her lip and comes out again here. Next, I will find where I believe her brow bone sits, roughly. And let's give an indication of where we believe her nose sits. It appears to me like our sitter's face is divided pretty evenly into thirds. We can come back and visit the hairline, but I'm going to suggest it's there. And I may even use my pencil to just take a few measurements here and compare. Just based on sight and measurement, I feel like I had too much chin on her. That's a sort of little quirk of mine too. I tend to just seem to add on massive amounts of chin and jaw to my pictures. And I often have to take it away like a plastic surgery. And so if this is the bridge of her nose here, I think we can begin sawing away, at least for now, some areas of her face on the side here. Okay. Without getting lost in the weeds just yet, here's the other brow. She's got quite large eyes, large round eyes. I'm going to indicate these orbital sockets just as a reminder for myself. It'll look a bit strange right now, and I might drop a note where I think that nostril lives. All of this at this point is so light, and it can be revisited easily. Now she's got a fairly short, whatever that is we call it, that beautiful little indent just under the nose and between the lip. I'm going to make a mental note of that, roughly where I think her lower lip lands. And it seems to me the corners of her mouth come out some distance, not too far away from that nostril that we're guessing at here. Okay, so we've made some notes here for the front half of the face. And there's the center line of the neck. What about this area right here? There's an abrupt change here. All of this front plane of her face sort of bends out like a little teepee, and then it falls away abruptly towards her ear. This whole mandible area and her ear and the back of her head are living on a very different plane. So what I'm going to draw is an ellipse. So an ellipse is like a circle, but it's like a circle seen from the side. Okay, so I'm going to draw an ellipse here to give myself a plane to begin to work on, to better describe her head. And I will actually divide this ellipse into 4 equal-ish quadrants. And usually, not always, but usually the ear lives approximately in this last quadrant on the right here. And her neck would come up to there. In the photo, it appears to me that her brow and the top of her ear are very much in line with each other. So, and I'm going to make a little note there. It also appears to me that the bottom of her ear is in line with the bottom of her nose. Now, an issue I often have at this point is too much distance between the corner of the sitter's eye and where that flesh wraps around sort of the temple area to her ear, or I can have too much distance or too little distance there often, and I sometimes have to remeasure that. It looks to me like I have it pretty correct right now, but I may discover that something's not quite right about that as we move along through this sketch. I think I'm going to build out a bit more of the back of her head there, some of her hairline. Okay, so she's looking a bit like a space princess, and that's natural, nothing to panic about. Her actual hairline her actual part seems to be around here. Not a really important detail, but we'll include that. And at this point, our drawing is probably looking to have a lot of angles, not a lot of what is sometimes called organic shapes. It's more angular, and that's natural. We will be able to revisit and round out these areas later on as we move along. So now that we have our space princess kind of roughed in, we can begin making some more detailed comparisons and notes on the distances of certain features in her face. I feel like the angle is not quite right here, that the hairline is a little lower, that this forehead comes in a little more. She has a very soft, round cheek. When we're young, we have a lot of fat deposits in our face, and those fat deposits have not been drugged down by gravity. So our cheeks appear much less angular, more round and full, like this lovely young lady here. I may, in my enthusiasm, have exaggerated the roundness of her cheek, but I do love a round cheek. There we go. And now we can't see much of this eye here. I'm actually not going to fuss over it too much because it is going to be left in shadow, and in fact we kind of want to leave it a little bit less defined because it's farther away from us, it's obscured, and as a part of the artistic effect we want to maintain some of that obscurity there when we go in with our shading. Being that we've positioned her eye here, how I've done that, I don't really know. That part I'm having trouble explaining. It's somewhat intuitive. It's from practice, but I have been finding my way there. As I've worked my way through this side of the face and looking at this area in relation to the nose, what I'm looking at and perceiving the distance between the nose and the outside of the cheek. And what I'm aiming for is to get that distance as close to the photo as possible, looking to represent her face and capture her likeness. So now that we have that note of that eye, in order not to leave her kind of lopsided or with a wandering eye or a bit of a swimming effect, I'm going to try and position that iris on the same plane as the other one, naturally, and just indicate the lids roughly. Not too detailed at this point. Okay. She's got a very large and protruding eye. You can tell it's protruding because she's left quite a dark shadow under this eye that's in the light. Her eyes are deeply sunken into her face, a deep orbit, a large deep orbit that's leaving a lot of shadow over top as well. I don't really like to strongly draw in eyebrows. I think they look a little more convincing when they're softly placed in there. But for now, that's about as much note as I want to include on her lovely large eye. Now the question I have for myself is, have I left too much distance between the corner of this eye, the inner corner, and the bridge of the nose going over to the next eye? At first glance it feels like I have, but maybe it's not so bad. What I'm looking at here, I made these lines here. So there's this very strong light going across her nose. And if I include that, what I'm trying to do is help myself understand whether this distance is too much. So far it looks okay. The corner of the edge of her nose lines up quite neatly with the inside corner of her eye. So I do think that corner of the nose is in the right spot. And her little nostril tips down there. She's got a, I don't know what you would call that, but a nice little tuck on her nose underneath. I'm going to come in a bit lighter here, only because there really isn't a ton of cast shadow just right on that corner. What's her face remind me of? Maybe like Greek sculpture, large Roman nose, a deep Cupid's bow, that's this shape in the lip. I might over exaggerate some of these features, like the roundness in her cheek. I just find these portions of her face quite charming. Obviously the photographer did as well. They chose their model very well. And those large eyes of hers, yeah, she reminds me of Greek sculpture. Taking another look at her forehead, I see I had the midline of her forehead kind of off. Not really important to the overall drawing, but I still want to make that note right now just to anchor myself in here so that I'm still seeing properly as I move around the drawing. So there's this deep shadow that I like this light spot here. I'm going to just make a shape indicating that deep shadow so I can measure her chin and see if I've made it too long, which not surprisingly I have. And because I've made it too long, I probably should actually revisit this area too. This might not be quite right. If this is too long, I probably have to bring this in and up. So I'm going to go in and bring that in and up slightly. There's a shadow under her chin there. Neck here, a little bit of her garment there. Okay. Oh my goodness. This drawing's making me like actually sweat, not even over exaggerating. I'm sweating here. I'm working hard, burning calories, drawing. Oh my goodness. Okay. Yeah, she's looking very sci-fi. You know, for me right now, looking at her face, comparing the photo, I'm definitely feeling right off the bat like there is too much space in here. I've added a lot of breadth here that doesn't exist in her face. Everything here currently checks out for me, but it may be when I address this area that I will find there's something wrong in here. So, again, thankfully, this is sketched in very lightly. If my ear is in the correct area, there is a natural flow line that would fall down this way. A sort of natural geometry in her flip. A natural geometry that's in her face. And I'm going to draw that line in there. And it may just be that this jaw was made too deeply. And that also makes her neck feel like perhaps it was too wide. Her ear has this cute kind of angle here. I don't know, it reminds me of a fairy or something. So I'm gonna put a little more emphasis on that. the collar of her shirt. I'll readjust. I find it's more up in this area, which brings her shoulder up too. Just go ahead and erase those lines because it's a little distracting now. And this line too, and this one. Ooh, I can tell I'm fussing a little too much over this collar. Excuse me for a moment while I get lost in it. Okay. There's the edge of her neck there. There's the edge of her neck here. Reassessing. Is there too much distance here? Is there too much distance between here and here? There's a big bone that comes off here, and that is part of her jaw, and the cheekbone rests there. This would be where her nasal cavity was, her orbital socket right here. I'm kind of looking at these wayfinding areas to see if I've got too much space in here. And maybe that corner of the mouth isn't quite right, too. Perhaps I've got it too downturned. And it appears the corner of the mouth lines up perfectly with the edge of her iris there to me. So I don't think there's too much distance in here right now. But do you know what I'm going to do, actually? I'm going to pause this video. I'm going to take a little break and come back to this block in at this point to see if I've made any really critical area. But do you know what I'm going to do at this point is take a short break, just walk around, clear my head, and come back to this to see if I've made any critical errors in observation. But before I do that, just right off the bat, I think though her hair is quite fuzzy, it looks to me, I could, before I take a break, just make a few odd corrections right there. This is sweeping away here and here. Okay, we're going to leave it alone and we'll come back to it in a minute. Okay, we took a break. So, well, I think this is looking okay. If you spot some place where I've gone really horribly wrong, my apologies. I might take a quick note or two on her ear. Ears are so interesting. They're very unique. You know, everybody's ear has a lot of character. The shapes are consistent. They've always got the same bits and pieces, but arranged in slightly different proportions and at slightly different angles. So there's her ear. There's the top of that lid. There's the bottom of that lid. Okay. I think next we can probably go into making a bit of a shadow map. So first of all, and for no reason in particular, I'm just going to start at her jaw area here. Now what I'm going to do is basically draw a line around the edge of those darker shadows, and it's going to look a bit confusing right now, isn't it? So maybe I will just get rid of some of my notes here so that we remember where we're trying to go at this point. And we can see the edges of our shadow map a little better, and it's not so confusing. So here is the edge of that shadow under her chin. We'll go in, describe that a little, make a few notes there, ever so lightly. And being mindful that this is in partial shadow only. There's a little bit of a shadow coming here off her forehead. And I'm going to erase a little bit of that. Bit of shadow under her brow bone. Some shadows in her ears that we may come in and address later, or we might not. Not feeling too fussy about it. And just generally indicating where her hair is kind of in shadow. Okay, let's talk about something. So there's lighter areas on her face. The lightest areas would be right here on her nose, maybe just directly here where her cheekbone juts out under the eye socket. It's lighter-ish here. But there's darkest areas, right under the lip. Deep indentation there as her teeth occupy this space and her lips have to wrap around them, leaving a deep indent under there and under her chin. And in this area. But there's also midtones, something us artist folks like to call midtones, and it's in this area. It's not completely dark, nor is it completely light. There's a varying scale of midtone expressed in different areas on her face. Just here, in that sort of little bag under her eye, we see a bit of a midtone. We see one too, sort of transitioning from her chin that juts out more than her jaw and her mouth right here. We will get into those midtones in later classes, but I think we're just going to address the darkest and lightest areas for expedience sake. I will probably switch pencils at this point. Maybe to something softer. Okay. So, yeah, something just jumped out at me. Let's soften up this bridge of her nose a bit on this side. Okay. So, applying ever so slight pressure. I mean, right now I'm using my 6B pencil. 6B. It is so soft. And I was barely touching the page there. Look at this. With the 2H, how much lighter that line is. Look at how dark this one is. So 6B will give you a very dark, very soft line. You don't need to apply a lot of pressure, again, especially at these early stages. And I'm just going to ever so lightly make note of those darkest areas on this young lady's face. You know what's interesting? As I'm doing that, I can see mistakes coming out. Sometimes adding volume really makes those mistakes jump out. So I'm going to bring that in a bit. We'll go back in and continue shading ever so lightly into these areas. Those areas where we can't see a lot of detail, again, we're just going to ignore those, because leaving a little bit of mystery is always nice. And I perceive more errors in the chin area here. I feel like it's still too deep, too strong, that chin. I don't know what it is with me and chins. It's a real weakness. But now perhaps I've made it too small. So we'll just add a little bit there. I don't know. I guess we'll find out what's wrong with it as I go along. But I'm going to go in and lightly indicate here. Just switching back and forth with pencils while I'm addressing those kind of weird spots that I was telling you about around her lower cheek and chin area here. I feel like I didn't quite capture just right. Okay, I'm going to keep moving along. Quite dark in these areas. Just putting a little bit of a special focus or darkness in them. And then coming around, sorry about my left hand, describing that very super soft, super cutie pie little kid face that she's got there. Everything's so soft and sweet and plump. Very adorable. Okay. And very, very gently addressing this lid, because I want to leave enough lightness. This shadow is not truly very dark in here. It's there, but it's not truly dark. And again, softly with that eyebrow. I don't want to go too hardcore with it. And not getting too detailed. And the darkness under her lower lid, ever so softly. And addressing the fact that this eyeball is indeed a sphere living in the head, so part of the whites of the eyes will be slightly in shadow as well. Okay. Okay. And going in, describing some of those indistinct portions of her hair, because it's got this lovely, fluffy, soft texture. It's diffused diffused and rippling, wavy, curly hair that's looking a little untamed right now. It's quite charming. Feel like my hand is like right in your way and you can't see. Sorry. I'm just making a few notes about that ear again. Okay. And if we want to, we can go in and describe a little bit about that garment. Right. There. It's kind of, oh, let's get rid of some of these hard lines there. All right. You know, we're just about finished with this for now. I'm just going to go in with my stump, my blending stump, and do a couple things. But mostly this is about where we're going to leave it. Remembering to breathe. It's very important. Okay, blending stump time. I'm also applying very, very little pressure here with the blending stump. It is, after all, a young lady, so we're not trying to give her a too hard appearance. There may be other times, other subject matters where, you know, you don't use such a light touch. Maybe a rougher treatment makes more sense. Maybe it's a grizzled old man with a wild beard or something. But in the case of such a delicate young lass, we will approach her appearance with delicacy. Okay. Now I'm going to take my kneading eraser, my gum eraser, what do we call it? And I'm going to make a little nubbin here, just to pick out some of those areas I lost while shading, like that little area under her nose, where the cupid bow of her mouth is. I'm actually go in and bring a little depth into this area and this area. Okay. And ooh, that 6B is so soft and creamy, but boy, it that lead really comes away from the pencil very easily. Okay. Where else? Is there anywhere else I want to pick out? Well, some things. I don't think so. You know what? That's it, class. That's it for today. That's as far as we're going to take it. I wish you great success, and I'll see you next week in class. Bye-bye.